Hi, I'm Emily Watkins, and this is the WBFO Disabilities Beat. Warm weather and sunny skies make summer the perfect time to go to festivals in Western New York and Southern Ontario. But for people with disabilities, festivals are sometimes set up in a way that is difficult to navigate, overstimulating, or inaccessible. This week, WBFO reporter Grant Ashley has a deep dive into 2 local LGBTQ Pride festivals that happened this summer in Buffalo and Toronto. According to a Human Rights Campaign analysis of CDC survey data, 36% of LGBTQ adults self-report having a disability, compared with 24% of non-LGBTQ adults. With the likelihood these festivals would have a significant attendance from the disability community, Ashley asks what these festivals are doing to make their events more accessible. Here's what he learned. This is the second installment of a 2-part series. You can find both parts on our website at wbfo.org.
Ron Ward went to the Buffalo Pride Parade this year, but he skipped the Pride Festival. Last time they attended the festival in 2022, Ward, who is disabled and uses a cane, had to wait in a long line because there wasn't a separate accessible entrance. And once inside, there weren't a lot of places for him to sit down.
There was a guy who was walking down the line and he was apologizing to people with mobility aids and stuff because he felt so bad that no one had planned ahead for people with disabilities to be able to kind of skip the line, because there were tons of people with canes and walkers standing in this line I think I was in the line for at least an hour, and I had a cane, and this man was like, "I'm so sorry that no one planned better for you."
Organizers of Buffalo Pride say they're aware of experiences like Ward's, and they're actively working to make the parade and the festival more accessible. For this summer's festivities, organizers reached out to disability advocacy organizations for advice, and they ended up implementing new accessibility features. Organizers put an accessible viewing platform along the parade route, and they added an accessible entrance to the festival, purposefully located not far from the main stage's accessible viewing area, although attendees with disabilities would still have to wait in the box office line if they didn't buy their ticket in advance. This year's festival also included a sensory cool-down tent with fans and earplugs, and an alcohol-free sober tent, both of which were new.
Planning starts with taking a look at the year before.
That's Latrice Myers. She heads the marketing and communications team at Evergreen Health, which organizes and sponsors Buffalo Pride. She says that her team's conversations with disabled activists were crucial to improving accessibility at this year's Pride events.
I learned a lot personally, and also as a person who plans events, about the ways that we could look at every event that we plan differently.
A large part of making events like Buffalo Pride equitable to disabled attendees involves making sure the event venue is accessible. Canalside, where the Buffalo Pride Festival is held, is mostly grass and cobblestone streets, both of which can be barriers for people using mobility aids, according to Dave Whalen, the director of Niagara University's Institute on Disability Awareness. Whalen also informally advised Buffalo Pride organizers on how to make this year's Pride events more accessible.
Your choices are minimal. If you put mats down, the cost is extensive. When you're doing an outdoor event, you're only going to be limited to where you're at, and outdoor events are going to be mainly grass. If you're doing something that's going to be in the street, then you're good. The downside of that is if it's a hot day, who wants to be walking around on concrete for 2 hours?
But Whalen and Myers agree that there isn't really a better place to hold this festival. Despite its relatively inaccessible grounds, Canalside checks all the boxes. It's outside, centrally located, right next to Buffalo's Metro line, and big enough to accommodate 8,000 people in a stage. Myers says that Buffalo Pride organizers do everything they can in the weeks before the festival to make sure Canalside is as accessible as possible.
A month or so before the festival happened, we were out there with measuring tape, measuring out what size space do we need for the viewing area? What kind of platform do we need?
But while Toronto Pride's website extensively lists the accessibility resources available to attendees, Buffalo Pride's website doesn't. It mentions the main stage's accessible viewing area and warns disabled attendees about the grass and cobblestone streets at Canalside. But as of the weekend Pride was held, it didn't say anything about the sensory tent or the accessible viewing area for the parade, according to the Wayback Machine. Organizers mentioned new accessibility features in at least one local news interview on WGRZ, and they posted about the new accessibility features on Facebook and Instagram. But we could only find one post on each platform about a week and a half before Pride weekend. When asked, a spokesperson for Evergreen said they posted, quote, several times about accessibility. Many disabled people research the features that are important to them well in advance of an event. Courtney Duro says she researches accessibility for events weeks in advance. Duro is disabled and has chronic lung failure and chronic restrictive pulmonary disease, which means she has to bring oxygen tanks to concerts, festivals, and other events.
It's not something you can just do a week, like 3 days before an event, let alone like a week, or like it might take 2 weeks depending on how far in advance your ride may require you to plan. If you're relying on a family member, then they need to know ahead of time if they need to take work off, or, you know, maybe they have childcare. They have to figure out someone to watch their kid so that they can drive you to the event. Like, things that able-bodied people don't have to worry about.
Ward says the lack of online information about accessibility is the reason they haven't attended since 2022.
I did look on their website in 2023 to see if they had mentioned improving accessibility, and they didn't mention it, so I was like, I'm going to figure they didn't do it. This year I didn't even bother to look. I was just like, I got my plans after the parade. I don't need the festival.
Disabled Buffalonians have also taken matters into their own hands by creating their own accessible events. Artist Bianca L. McGraw, who has chronic pain and a mobility condition, has helped organize a free barbecue event called the Queer BQ in the past. McGraw says the event is a more intimate, free alternative to the Buffalo Pride Festival, which costs $15 to attend.
People, donate money for food. People just show up. They have DJ and everything. But it's all small space, and so people can come and sit on the little picnic tables, relax, eat a little food, or people will help make food for them. So that's kind of nice, so little small stuff like that.
But while disabled people have forged their own ways of celebrating Pride, Ward says that disabled people should have access to larger LGBTQ plus community events.
Pride needs to be inclusive, because if it's not for everyone, then it's not really Pride. There are so many, like watching the Pride Parade, seeing how many people have signs that are about like, oh, we need to make sure this group is included and this group is included, because if they're not included, it's not really Pride. And it's like, that applies to disabled people too.
Buffalo Pride organizers at Evergreen say they are in the process of reviewing feedback from this year's Pride events. They also said that they would continue to work with disability advocacy groups to improve accessibility, and they plan on applying what they've learned about accessibility to other Evergreen events. Grant Ashley, WBFO News.
You can listen to the Disabilities Beat segment on demand, view a transcript and plain language description for every episode on our website at WBFO.org. I'm Emily Watkins. Thanks for listening.